We're going to explore another godly character quality today, and that godly character quality is commitment. Commitment is an interesting one, and one that we probably should give more attention to than we do. Recently, I came across an article, and it said, in the process of redefining what counts in life, many of us have decided that commitment is not in our best interests. Traditional concepts such as loyalty and the importance of membership in various groups have been thrown out in favor of personal interest and self-preservation. That's a pretty tough statement. It goes on to say commitment is viewed negatively because it limits our abilities to feel independent and free, to experience new things, limits our abilities to change our minds at the spur of the moment, focus on self gratification rather than helping other people. People willingly make commitments only when the expected outcome exceeds what they must sacrifice as a result of that commitment. In other words, if it costs you too much and you don't get enough in return, then forget that uh, commitment. So that's what we're thinking about today. This thing of commitment. Another author, maybe it's the same author, said, I see commitment as the most important means we have of shaping our brief mortal lives into something meaningful, and even more important, of linking these brief mortal lives that we have, of linking them to the larger dimension of the eternal. That's a pretty bold statement, and I think we should wonder if it can be followed. Jesus was a person of commitment. In John chapter 6 and verse 38, he said, I have come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. He said, I am committed to do his will. What kind of people should we be? Well, we should be like Jesus, of course. That's where God is taking us in our journey. We should be people of commitment if we're going to be like Jesus. We're going to have character like he had. We're going to have the character quality of commitment. Someone has said that one of the issues today is that there's in deep commitment. It doesn't get any deeper than that. So we should study it. We should embrace it as a godly character quality based on God's commitment to us. Many years ago, almost a lifetime ago, I took as a verse for life in Romans chapter 13. It says, stay away from the love of money, content with what you have, for God has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. That's God's commitment. He makes a commitment to his children, makes a commitment to those who trust him, those who walk with him. So we should pursue this godly character quality, and we should pay whatever price it takes to develop it as one of our character qualities. So today I want us to look at it. First of all, an explanation of it, what it is. Then we'll look at the enemies of commitment, because there are enemies to it. And then lastly, we'll look at the enlarging of commitment in our lives. So let's see if we can explain it. Let's see if we can work on some concepts and some definitions. Webster's dictionary, as he often does, says that commitment is a committing or being committed. He uses same words, so it's kind of a circular definition. If you go to his word commit, you'll find that it says it means to engage or to pledge or to even pledge by implication. And then it has the idea of binding ourselves to something. Some things we are committed to by implication. We show up often enough and long enough, it becomes assumed that we're committed to something. That's an implication. One of my great mistakes in life was when I was in high school. I was a senior in high school. I had run track in my junior year. I worked on the half mile and the mile in those days before it was called yards and meters. And we came down into my last year and we had a track meet. And I was fortunate enough to win the mile and the half mile. And then we went out to work out the next day, and one of the coaches got on my case about something, and I just turned and walked away. A horrible decision. I have long wished I could have done that one over again. I missed the district track meet and I missed the state track meet. And after the county meet, where I'd won those two races, there was an article in the paper and it listed me as one of the potentials for winning the state track in the half mile that year. And I blew that all away. I didn't have a great commitment to track. I thought I did, and now I wished I had, but I didn't. So I didn't pay the price. I didn't want to pay the price. But I had given the implication that I was on the track team. I was until that fatal and mistake that I made. So commitment is the engaging or pledging of oneself, someone or something. Someone else has said that it's a state of intellectual and emotional adherence to some political, social, or religious theory or action or practice. So it's adherence according to that definition. We bind ourselves to something, we commit ourselves to something, we pledge ourselves to something, we indicate that that's what we're going to do and where we're going to be. What's the opposite of it? If that's the definition of it, and if it's a godly character quality, what would be the opposite? Well, the opposite is probably indulgence. To indulge ourselves means to yield or to satisfy a desire, give ourselves over to that, to satisfy our wishes. It means to be very lenient with ourselves. And if we're lenient with ourselves, we won't be committed. We won't be adhering to something. We won't be pledged to something. And indulgent means to yield to one's own desires, what I want rather than what's best and good. And it's doing what we feel like doing instead of what we've said we will do or what we can rightfully be expected to do. We have identified ourselves with someone or something. And there are degrees of commitment. Those from the great commitment to no commitment. I lived in Canada for 20 years. I decided to make a commitment to hockey so that I could follow it and so I could carry on a conversation with one of the most talked about subjects at least in that part of Canada that we live. But I never had a great commitment to hockey. I was there in the Edmonton area when Wayne Gretzky was the big star, and I did go see him play at different times. But I didn't make a commitment to follow hockey. I just did it as a social thing to relate to people. But I did make a commitment to hunting. I used to spend a good amount of my resources and energy and time hunting deer and elk and moose, and it took a long time before I got away from that commitment. I'm no longer committed to it. I'm no longer adhering to hunting or tied to hunting. But there are different levels of it, and there should be different levels of it. Our commitment to God should be the greatest commitment. We should adhere to God, to doing life His way, to doing what He wants us to do. We should be able to say with Jesus, I am here to do the will of the one who called me. He called me out of darkness into light. He called me from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light, to the kingdom of His dear Son. And we should live with that kind of a commitment. I am here to do the will of Him who called me to Himself. And we should do that at whatever it costs us. We do it to please God. Another high level commitment is if we're married, we're committed to a spouse. We make wedding vows till life does part us or separate us. It's sad that in our culture today, over half of the new marriages are going to end in divorce. That commitment that is being made is not being kept. It's not a commitment. It's a temporary thing. It's something that we move away from. But it should be a high level of commitment based on scripture and based on all of the studies of our culture. It should be a high commitment. There's huge cost to separation and divorce. Another level of commitment, almost as high, but not quite as high, as our commitment to our children. If we have children, we need to be committed to them. We need to be committed to what's best for them, doing what's best for them as far as possible, doing what's best for them, even at personal cost. There's that level of commitment. Then there's the level of commitment to a job. A job takes a high level of commitment. Is it as high as our commitment to God? No. Times that we have to sacrifice the job to do God's will. As high as our commitment to our spouse, it should not be. Our commitment to our husband or wife should be greater than our commitment to a job. We shouldn't let our job rob us of a relationship with our spouse. I'm not sure where commitment to children would fit in with the commitment to a job. We will be committed to take care of our children and provide. We will not allow them to be deprived or suffer needlessly. There's a commitment to a lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle are we committed to? Are we committed to godliness? Are we committed to righteousness? Are we committed to peace? Are we peacemakers? Blessed are the peacemakers. Are we committed to that? Those are some levels of commitment. Then we might ask the question, well, how do I know if I have commitment? What are the evidences of it? Let me rattle off 3 or 4. One of the evidences of commitment is that we can be counted on to do what we said we will do and what is rightfully expected of us. We can be counted on. If we commit to a job, we'll be there on time, all of the time. If we're committed to our spouse, we'll be there to care for and walk with our spouse. There are examples of commitment in our culture. Walk each morning and on the sidewalk, and there are 2 or 3 houses yet that have a paper laying there on the driveway. And I was thinking, as I thought about this, and I was thinking this morning, someone is committed to putting that paper on the on the driveway each morning. And if that isn't there, if that commitment is not kept, uh, there's going to be some unhappy customer not being able to get their paper. Committed to doing it every day, committed to doing it on time. That would be an evidence. If the paper is there every week, there's the evidence that the paper carrier is committed to it. If it's not there all the time, on time, you can rightfully deduct that he is not committed to it. It also means giving it our best effort. If we're committed to something, we give it our best effort. It's possible for us to not give our best effort on a job. Possible for us to not give our best effort to our spouse and to our children. It's possible for us to not give our best effort to God. We can just kind of dog it. We can just do as little as we have to, as little as we can get by with. But doing the best we can, giving it our best effort, is an evidence of commitment. And another evidence of commitment is doing it regardless of other opportunities that come along. Sometimes we would give something our effort unless something interesting, more interesting came along. Experience of that many years ago. My wife and I talked different times that we really weren't travelers. That was not a big thing for us. But we said if we could travel, there would be two places in the world that we would like to go. One, we would like to go to Jerusalem, to Israel, and two, we would like to go to a mission field. And that went on for several years, and neither of those developed. And then one day I got an invitation to go to Thailand to speak at a pastor's conference in Thailand. And I thought, wow, one of our desires is going to be fulfilled. And then I looked at the calendar and I had already committed to speak at a Bible camp at the exact same dates. So I was in a dilemma. And in that dilemma, I called my district superintendent and I told him what was the situation was, explained it to him of the conflict. And it was silent for a few seconds on the other end of the line. And then he said, well, Dell, a commitment is a commitment. That sentence is stuck in my life from that time until this day. Did not accept the invitation to go to Thailand. I went and spoke at the camp instead. I made a commitment. That was something very appealing that had come along. Psalm 15:4 says, he who keeps his oath, even when it hurts, is someone who has commitment. And then on the other side of it is we do what we or should do regardless of any challenges that come along. And sometimes there are challenges that come. We have to overcome obstacles to do what we have said we would do, to do what we're committed to. And when we overcome those challenges, that is an evidence of commitment. So I ask myself, am I a committed person? Do I have the character quality of commitment? And I look for these evidences. Can I be counted on to do what I said I would do or what's expected of me? Do I give it my best effort? Do I do it regardless of whether other opportunities come along? And do I do it regardless of what the challenges are? And that takes me to my second topic, and that is the enemies of commitment. And one of the first ones is difficulties. There are lots of difficulties that can come and test our commitment. One is sickness. Do we work through sickness? Do we use that as an excuse to not do what we should do, even though it's going to be hard to do it? That's a challenge. And then there are personal disappointments that are difficulties. Sometimes they're disappointments come to us in life, and life has its disappointments. How we handle those disappointments is a key to life. I've sometimes said that how we handle disappointments will reveal what kind of character we have. But disappointments come. Do we let disappointments rob us of our commitment, or do we give in to the disappointments? And there are discouragements. Most of us go through some discouraging periods in life. For some, they last a long time. And if we don't handle disappointments well, we will get discouraged, and then we will get disheartened, and then we will get maybe depressed because we haven't handled the disappointment well. So there are disappointments, there are discouragements, there are difficulties, there are things that come our way. And the real test of our character is whether we keep our commitments or whether we back off from those commitments, whether we run the last two track meets or whether we pass them up. And then there are also distractions that come. There are activities that catch our eye. There are things that we see that are of great interest to us. Activities happen around us all the time, different activities. And sometimes we can get caught watching an activity instead of doing what we should be doing. And there are unusual events that happen in our lives, events that we don't anticipate, events that we couldn't predict. And so these events come, and sometimes we allow them to rob us of our commitment. Sometimes it's just simply people to talk to. Committed to something, and then if we like to chat with people, someone comes along, and the next thing we know, we've had a half hour or an hour away from our commitment. We used to call shooting the breeze with people. It's an enemy to our commitment, the difficulties and the distractions. And then the same is true as I've indicated before, opportunities are enemies of commitment. Something exciting comes along. I have known people back in the day when we were working on our that someone would come along and say, "Hey, the fish are really biting in such and such a place," and we'd lay the saw down and stick the axe there, and we'd go fishing. I remember one time when I was not too old, but old enough to help. I was working with my father in the logging business, and two men came to see us. And the cherries in the Flathead Valley of Montana were just really came on, and these two guys thought it was worth their time to get my dad and I think me too to go and pick cherries. As I remember, we didn't go, but I also remember them trying to persuade us that we should go. Sometimes there are challenges. Sometimes there are things that are more illustrious. Sometimes there are things that are more lucrative. And the money can cause us to back off from our commitment to someone or something because there's more money somewhere else. Those are enemies. And then there's the big enemy, the enemy of self-indulgence. We can have a desire to experience new things. We can have the desire to feel free and independent. And those can come at the expense of our character. We can sacrifice our character. We can diminish our character, especially the character quality of commitment. And some of us like to retain the option of changing our minds at the spur of the moment. We can even pride ourselves in that we are free to choose, and that is an enemy. Focus on self gratification rather than helping other people is a big one that can pull us away from our commitment. And these enemies must be overcome. If we're going to have strong character, if we're going to have the character quality of commitment, if we're going to have a growing character quality of commitment. And there are many examples of how that was overcome. Some of my favorites come out of the Old Testament. One is the story of Ruth in the book of Ruth. And Naomi went to a foreign country, and her husband died, and her sons died, and then she was going back to Judah, and Ruth was her daughter-in-law. Her son was dead, but Ruth was her daughter-in-law, and Naomi said, "No, you really should stay here with your people." And Ruth said, "No, I'm committed to you, and where you go, I will go, and your people will be my people." A wonderful example of commitment. She was committed to her mother-in-law. And of course, if we've read the book of Ruth, we know the story turned out really well. Not all stories do turn out that well. But another one has to do with the prophets, Elisha and Elijah. And Elijah's life was about over, and he knew something unusual was going to happen, and his protege, Elisha, knew that something was going to happen. And Elijah tried to get Elisha to stay while he went across the Jordan River and things like that. And Elisha said, "No, I will not do it." He said, "I will stick with you." And he said, "I just want a double portion of what you've got, the double portion of the character that you have, Elijah." And so he was blessed by seeing a chariot come and pick Elijah up and take him to heaven. But it was his commitment to Elijah that really stands out. And of course, that story turns out well as well. And then there's the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. He was committed to purity. Cost him some years in prison, but he was committed to purity. He would not give in. He would not move away from that commitment, no matter what the opportunity was or what the temptation was. He would not. He was committed to it. And then there's the story of the three Hebrew men in the book of Daniel. They were committed to following their God. They were committed to obeying him and pleasing him. They ended up in a furnace of fire, but they were committed. And those examples, those stories speak volumes to us about what it means to be committed. And above and beyond that, though, as mentioned earlier, is God's commitment to us. He makes a covenant with us. He signs his commitment to us, signed in the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so we need to overcome the enemies. We need to stay committed to what we're committed to. We need to build that commitment. So that leads me to the third point. How do we enlarge our commitment? Well, we first of all got to make a commitment. What are commitments? What are you committed to? What am I committed to? I asked a friend that just today. What are you committed to in life? Commitment takes in our heart and our mind, and we consciously and should consciously make commitments. They should be irrevocable. We won't go back on them. We will follow God's example for us. We will say, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And unreservedly. I ask myself as I study this whole thing, have I made commitments? What kind of commitments have I made? It's possible to go through life avoiding commitments, just going with the flow, being free and easy. We can miss making them because of the shallowness of our hearts and lives, but we need to make commitments. And I would invite you today to evaluate and say, what are my commitments? What commitments have I made? And then maybe ask the question, what commitments should I make? What should I be committed to? And then we need to keep them, keep those commitments. Do what's right. Even if no one else does it, we do what's right. We do what we've said we would do. We do what people can rightfully expect of us. We do our very best, and we continue to do our very best. Maybe everyone around us will do the opposite. Maybe we will stand alone. But probably not. Elijah thought he was alone. God said, I had 10,000 people that haven't bowed their knee to Baal yet. Keep your commitment, not to bow to Baal, but to worship me. And when I was in high school, we had a situation where there was one of our student friends who was picked on often. Then it was a challenge to stand up for him. It was a challenge to take his side, to go and stand beside him and walk with him. Even though many people would rather pick on him. And I would suggest that we remember the promises of God. God has made promises to us. Those are commitments. And we need to make commitments, set our sail against the winds of culture and the winds of the world, and maintain our commitments that we make, that are right, proper commitments. I think of all of this and I ask myself the question, as I said before, am I a committed man? What have I committed to? What am I committed to? Am I keeping those commitments? And then we can be the kind of person God wants us to be, and be someone with godly character. And it will depend in this incident on how committed we are, how much of a character quality do we have in commitment. I have neglected to do the discussion questions. I will have to do them and get them to you, Pastor Michael. I apologize for that.